Namaskar. Today we talk about Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti, that is love for God. Bhakti essentially means we worship all kinds of gods and goddesses. We worship Rama, Sri Krishna, Durga, Kali, and there are hundreds and thousands of gods and goddesses that we worship. That is essentially the process of bhakti through which we try to realize the God. In fact, that is the visible aspect of Hinduism also. We all generally adopt this bhakti yoga in Hinduism, and that is how the world knows Hinduism. So hence we understand what bhakti is and why bhakti. How does it affect our path of sadhana and how we can adopt bhakti in our life to pursue this path of sadhana to reach the God. When we look at bhakti, we see bhakti has a magical effect in our life. When bhakti enters food, it becomes prasad. When bhakti enters hunger, it becomes upabas. When it enters water, it becomes charnamrit. When bhakti enters travel, it becomes pilgrimage. When bhakti enters song, it becomes kirtan or bhajan. And when bhakti enters house, it becomes temple. And it enters work, it becomes seva. Now, that is the magical effect the bhakti has in various aspects of our life and the path of sadhana that we follow. Bhakti has been explained very beautifully by sage Narada in Bhakti Stotra, where he explains the power of bhakti, what bhakti is and what is the power of bhakti. There he explains that just by bhakti alone for God, that is love for God alone, we can get siddho bhavati, amrito bhavati, tripto bhavati. We can get sadhana, with lot of difficulties after pursuing it over a long period of time, practice again and again. But we can get siddho bhavati, just by sheer of love, we can get the siddhi. Amrito bhavati, amrito yani immortality. We can get this knowledge of immortality of ourself, the Atman and Brahman, just by sheer love for the God. So we can get amrito bhavati. Tripto bhavati, we can get satisfaction. We can also get satisfaction and happiness from the materialistic world, but that is all temporary, very, very transient. But for bhakti, we can get that everlasting satisfaction and happiness through the God. In fact, Sri Krishna has explained again and again in his Gita that if the devotees worship me with full bhakti and love, I will give you that knowledge and the jnana. In chapter 12, that is the Bhakti Yoga, Sri Krishna has explained the various aspects of bhakti and how bhakti makes our path of sadhana much more easier. Sri Krishna asked Arjuna in that chapter, he says, Evam satata yukta ye bhaktastvam paryupasate ye chapyaksharam avyaktam tesam ke yoga vittamaha. Hey Sri Krishna, tell me those devotees who worship you in your manifested form and all those other devotees who worship you in the unmanifest form, in a formless form, who among them are better versed, well versed in yoga? Sri Krishna explains, Maya Veshya Mano Emang Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Paryopetaste Me Yukta Tamamataha. Sri Krishna explains how a bhakta should take the path of sadhana with full concentration, full focus, all his thoughts devoted to God, and with full shraddha, full devotion. Now, here I would like to explain this aspect of shraddha. Shraddha is not just a blind faith. In fact, Chinmayananda has explained this concept of shraddha very beautifully. He has said, my belief in me, which I do not know, so that I know what I believe in. It means that I begin my journey with a faith, with belief, and knowing that I do not know as yet. But when I take this journey, I slowly get to know the ultimate reality, the real truth, just by the practice of shraddha. Then Sri Krishna explains in another sloka, he says, Klesha adhikataro tesham avyakta sakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir dukkham dehavadhirvapate. He explains, those devotees who worship me in the unmanifest form, those who worship me with full devotion, but in that Brahman which is expressionless, they find it much more difficult to pursue this because of this deep involvement of embodiment, that is Dehabadhiravapati. We are all aware of this creation, aware of this world through body and mind. Our mind is sunk so much in the flesh. Our mind is so much involved in taking care of this body that this mind will find it extremely difficult to think something beyond our body, beyond something which doesn't have a form. Our mind will find it extremely difficult to concentrate or even visualize something which is formless. And that is why bhakti plays a very important role in our bhakti, where we have the devotion and bhakti towards the Brahman in a form in various gods and goddesses. Now, having said that, it is also not correct that we discard all the other paths, that is Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga and Raja Yoga. In fact, Sri Swami Vivekananda has explained that we need to use all the four paths so that we can use all the cognitive power of our mind and make our path of sadhana much more easier and much more effective. Let's briefly understand what all these 3 or 4 paths are. Before we understand this, if we define our problem, then it will be much easier to understand the solution also. In Jnana Yoga, intellectually we possibly be knowing that the reality is the Brahman. Everything that we see is all manifestation of that all-powerful, all-invading consciousness or Brahman. But our mind does not see that. We don't realize that. Why? Because of our ignorance. Our mind is not capable of seeing that because of the ignorance. So if we remove the ignorance, we will get to see this. But a yogi will say, no. Ignorance is not the problem. It is the mind. It's the fickle mind. Mind cannot focus. And that is the reason why we don't realize the jnana. Hence, our mind has to be focused. Like Patanjali Muni has said in Yoga Sutra, Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. So, it is the mind which has to be controlled and channelized in the appropriate manner to realize the truth. A Bhakti Yogi will say, No, it is not the ignorance or it is not the mind which is the problem, but it is the abhakti that we have towards the God, and that is the problem. Now, having discussed all these four paths, we realize that if we employ all the four paths, then it will be much more easier to even derive maximum result out of the bhakti yoga. So we pursue jnana yoga, we pursue karma yoga, we do raja yoga, and we also do bhakti yoga. Now, there is another aspect that if we follow too much of one particular path, then we create some kind of imbalance or disharmony. Like, for example, when somebody is too much into jnana yoga, they get into what you call intellectualism. And those who are too much into karma yoga, they become very extroverted, always focused on work, busy with all kinds of extroverted work. Likewise, a yogi will be very much self-centered. He says, my meditation, my yoga and that kind of thing. Likewise, a bhakti yogi will become too much emotional if he is pursuing only bhakti. Hence, we have to create that right balance, right harmony by pursuing all the four paths to take this path of sadhana. Now, little bit about the spiritual journey that we talk about. Most of us in this world are so much involved in this body-mind activity that most of us don't even have the interest to understand what is the reality. Again, some of us have interest, but they don't have the understanding. And again, within some of us, they have the understanding. They also try to pursue this path, but they don't get the result. So they get kind of disheartened in this path of sadhana. Hence, we have to obviously have the patience and that full bhakti, full devotion that yes, if I pursue this path of sadhana, one day I will definitely realize. Now, bhakti yoga, let's talk about bhakti yoga, how exactly we can have this bhakti in our life for this path of sadhana. Now, bhakti has its own intrinsic strength. We have realized, we have seen that. And bhakti yoga is also very popular. Most of us are all very comfortable pursuing this path of bhakti to realize the God. But there is what you call adhikar that we have to pursue this path of bhakti. Without these qualifications, without having those adhikar, we will not be able to pursue this path of bhakti effectively. Now, what are those? One is vairagya, that is to realize that this creation, this world is all transient and the ultimate truth is the Brahman. Then the next qualification we have to have is viveka. It means that we know, if intellectually we know that whatever we see in this world, this materialistic world, are all temporary, are not the reality, then we must withdraw ourselves from this materialistic world as much as possible. Then there has to be some discipline that we have to have as part of this adhikar that we are talking about. One is samaha, that is calmness of mind. Damaha, that is reduce our sensory urge that we have. Then we have to have what you call uparati. Uparati meaning an effort to withdraw yourself from this sensory world and reduce the materialistic and worldly activities. Then samadhan, to pursue this path of sadhana with lot of dedication. Titiksha, that is the endurance. Whatever difficulties we face in this world, we must pursue this path of bhakti with full dedication and full shraddha. And the last qualification that need to have is called mumukshatva. meaning this intense desire to get the enlightenment. Now, these are the adhikar that you need to have if you want to get the result from the Bhakti Yoga. Now, any spiritual journey, it is essentially the mind which plays the role. But mind is not a very difficult, not a very easy thing to handle. Mind, because of, already we have explained that because of this continuous stimulation the mind gets from the sensory world, from the world, the materialistic world, that the mind finds it very difficult to take away from the sensory world and focus on this God. So mind has to be controlled. It has to be channelized appropriately. Now, I will explain this concept of mind and how the mind can be controlled through an example. Like we have seen an elephant, the elephant and the mahout. Whatever the mahout will say, the elephant will listen to him. Now, but imagine an elephant one day decides not to listen to mahout. Can the mahout do anything? It cannot, because the elephant is so strong and so big that mahout will have no power to control him if the elephant decides not to listen to him. Likewise, our mind is like the elephant, and the intellect or the discriminatory power is the mahout. Now, take for example, we want to get up early morning to do my yoga. Now, when you decide to get up, the discriminatory power, the intellect says, yes, I have to get up and I have to do my yoga to take care of my body and mind. The mind, the hathi, the elephant, will say, no, I want to sleep now, I want to enjoy or take rest. That's the reason why the intellect, the buddhi will find it very difficult to convince the mind that we have to get up. But, like we have seen the example of mahout and the elephant listens to mahout because he is given training again and again over a long period of time. Likewise, if we want the mind to listen to you, we have to make the, give the training to the elephant for such a long time that the elephant that is the mind will always listen to the intellect. That is how we can control the mind. So, any sadhana that we talk about, we must pursue this practice over a long period of time with lot of patience, and one day we'll surely get the result. Now let's understand how we can utilize this power of the mind and the training that we give it to the mind and get the maximum out of this Bhakti Yoga. Now, as a starting point in Bhakti Yoga, let's see how the mind functions. The mind functions like we have this tremendous thing about ahankara. We say, my family, my children, my money, my status. There are so many my thing in my life. Now, I can simply add in this long list of my thing, my God also. It can be even, the 100th in my list of my thing, but we can always do that. That my God comes in my list of things maybe in the 100 numbers. But once we do that, this God, the divinity, the power of divinity, the bhakti, has a tremendous power. Like there is a saying that bhikshu pada prasarana. What essentially means that the holy beggar, the bhikshu, the holy beggar, once he enters the house, in our house, how he spreads throughout the house and has his presence felt everywhere. So imagine a holy beggar comes to my house and he says, I want to stay here, just give me a small corner, that should be good enough. So you say, fine. So you can come and stay here in this small corner. Next day, the bhikshu says, well, I have this Gopala, the baby Krishna. He also needs to stay here. But of course, he cannot stay with me in this corner. He needs a separate corner. So you said, fine. So you create a corner for the baby Krishna to stay there. Next day you see the Bhikshu plucks the best of flowers from your garden and offers to baby Krishna. Of course, all the best of flowers must go to the Gopala. So you say, fine, it's absolutely fine. What can you do? Then the Bhikshu comes to the kitchen and says, oh, you are cooking food. My Gopala also needs the food, but it has to be prepared separately. And first we have to prepare the food for the Gopala, and hence you allow that a separate corner for the kitchen to prepare food for the Gopala. And that is how the God, once you have God in your list of things, whatever may be the number in the list, slowly He will enter and encompass in every aspect of our life. And like you say, my family, my children, my wife, you also start saying, my Krishna or my Rama. Now that is the magical effect that we are talking about, the bhakti has for us. Now little bit about this, all the rituals that we do as part of our worship, the puja that we perform. And also we're talking about the various forms. Now why is it so? First of all, we already explained that because of our attachment of mind with the body, it becomes very difficult for to visualize something which does not have a form. Hence we create these various kinds of forms, the gods and goddesses representing this Brahman, so that mind has some kind of support to focus on something. And that is the reason, the scientific reason, that why we have created these idols which essentially represent that Brahman, that ultimate God. And we also do various kinds of rituals as part of the puja. We offer flowers, we ring the bell, we light the incense stick, and we offer prasad. Now what are all these? These are essentially again a kind of support system for the mind to focus. Like for example, you must have seen that in our childhood when you would study, at that time we will see that when I'm reading, I'm not, while I'm reading, I'm trying to concentrate, but mind is wandering from here to there and all that. But when I really want to be serious about my studies, I want to focus, and mind does not go here and there. What exactly I do? I, that time, try to not only read and study the book, I try to highlight, I take down the points, all that activities that I do, so that I do not allow my mind to get deviated from the process of study that I am doing. Likewise, when I am trying to focus my mind on the God, I have a form, the gods and goddesses, the Brahman in a particular form in front of me. That is one support that I get. And I also do all these activities, the puja. I offer the flower, I incense the stick, and then I ring the bell. Like when you enter a temple, what happens? When I enter a temple, then what we do, that I remove my shoes and I enter the temple barefooted. Immediately my sense of touch gets captivated. Then I ring the bell. So my sense of hearing gets captivated. And as I come near to the idol, I look at the idol and my sense of sight gets captivated. And then I offer my prayer and the pujari gives me prasad. So I eat that. So my sense of taste gets captivated. Now like that, all my senses are captivated. Then what happens? That is the reason why in the temple, moment we enter, we have that huge feeling of bhakti that comes within us. And that is the power of bhakti, and that is how we can get bhakti in our life. But lastly, I also must say that we say all these gods and goddesses are basically representation of the ultimate Brahman. So do you mean that this Shiva, Kali, or Rama, these are all imaginary things? Not exactly. Sri Ramakrishna has said that when I worship Kali, then my mind is smeared with love for Kali. Hence, what I see, I visualize in my enlightened state of mind. I see that Kali in front of me. Likewise, Mirabai also, when he worshipped and he had that tremendous love for Krishna, she actually could see Sri Krishna in front of us. That is the power of bhakti that we have in our life. Thank you so much.